I moved into this apartment complex 6 months ago, a small, quiet building on the edge of town. Nothing fancy, but it was affordable and close to work. The kind of place where everyone minds their own business. My unit is 2B, the one right next to me. 2A is occupied by a man I've only seen twice. Mid-40s, pale, thin, always in the same grey hoodie. He introduced himself once, in the hallway, with a quick nod and a voice that sounded like he hadn't used it in years. "Mark," he said, no handshake, no smile. At first, I thought he was just private. I get that. I'm not exactly a social butterfly myself, but what started to bother me was that I never saw him leave, not once. No grocery bags, no packages, no sounds of doors closing, just silence. Except at night. Around 2 or 3 a.m., I'd hear movement through the thin walls, footsteps, faint whispers, something dragging across the floor. Sometimes it sounded like furniture scraping, but other times it was softer, like someone breathing. And then, once, I heard two voices. It was about 3:17 a.m. I remember the exact time because I'd just checked my phone, annoyed that I was awake again. The walls here are thin enough that I can hear when my neighbor sneezes, but this was different, low, deliberate voices. I pressed my ear against the wall. One voice was Mark's, rough, almost hoarse like gravel. The other was higher, a woman's voice, soft, pleading. "Please," she said, "you don't have to do this." My heart started pounding. I sat up straight in bed, completely alert. There was a muffled reply from Mark, but I couldn't make out the words. Then a thump, like something hitting the floor, followed by a scraping sound. I froze. After about 10 seconds of silence, I heard it again, the same woman's voice, but quieter now. "Help." That was enough. I called the building manager. He lived 2 floors up and answered groggily. I told him what I'd heard. He sighed. "You're not the first person to complain about noises from 2A, he said. "But trust me, Mark's fine, keeps to himself, probably watching TV too loud." "TV," I snapped. "It's 3 in the morning." "Yeah," he said, yawning. "He's harmless." But the thing is, the next night I heard it again. And this time there was laughter. The laughter was wrong. That's the only way I can describe it. Not hysterical, not joyful, more like the kind of sounds someone makes when they're trying to imitate laughter but don't really know how. It started as a low chuckle and grew louder, more distorted, like it was coming through a bad speaker. I turned off my fan just to make sure it wasn't the noise playing tricks on me. But no, it was real. I went to the wall again, pressing my ear flat against the cold plaster. The sound was definitely coming from 2A. Then I heard a whisper, almost right against the wall. "You're listening again." I jumped back like I'd been electrocuted. My heart was slamming against my ribs. There was no way he could have known I was there unless he was standing on the other side, doing the same thing. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on my couch, lights on, phone in my hand. Around 4 a.m., there was a knock on my door. 3 slow knocks. I froze, staring at the door. No peephole, no security cam, just wood and silence. Then a voice, calm, familiar. "You shouldn't listen to things that aren't meant for you." I didn't open the door, I couldn't. I just stood there in the dark, gripping my phone, waiting for another sound. But there wasn't one, no footsteps, no movement. After about a minute, I worked up the courage to whisper, "Mark." Silence. I waited another 5 minutes before looking through the gap under the door, nothing but the dim yellow light from the hallway. When I finally opened it, the hall was empty. No one, but taped to my door was a single piece of paper. It said, "Sorry for the noise." That was it, no signature, no explanation. The handwriting was small and painfully neat, like every letter had been written twice. The next morning, I went straight to the building manager again. I told him about the voices, the knocking, the note. He looked at me like I was describing a dream. "Look," he said, "Mark, been here longer than anyone. Pays rent early, never causes trouble. You're probably just stressed." "Stressed," I repeated. "There's someone else in that apartment." He sighed, then I'll check it myself. That evening, I watched him go to Mark's door. I stood by mine, listening. There was a short conversation, too quiet to make out. Then the manager left, shaking his head. When I asked what he saw, he said, "No one else lives there, just Mark." But that night at 3:14 a.m., I heard the woman's voice again. This time, she was crying. The sound was faint at first, a low, muffled sob that built until it became full-on weeping. I sat there frozen in bed, my stomach twisted into knots. I thought about calling the cops, but what would I even say? I think my neighbor is maybe doing something bad, but I'm not sure. I grabbed my phone and started recording, just in case. The crying continued for maybe 30 seconds. Then, a slam hard enough that the walls shook. I jumped, almost dropping my phone. Then I heard Mark's voice, clear as day, shouting, "I told you not to make noise." And then silence. The air in my apartment felt heavier, like it was pressing down on me. I couldn't breathe right. I played back the recording, but the weird thing was, it only caught the crying. No slam, no shouting, just the sobs fading out slowly. Around 3:45, there was a knock on the wall between our units. 3 times. Knock, knock, knock. I whispered to myself, "Don't answer, don't answer, don't answer." But the words came through the wall again. "You shouldn't record things that aren't yours." By morning, I'd made up my mind. I was calling the police, no matter how insane it made me sound. I showed them the recording, told them about the voices and the note. 2 officers came by that afternoon to check on Mark's unit. They knocked, he opened immediately. I was watching from my peephole the whole time. He looked exactly the same, grey hoodie, blank expression. He talked to them calmly for about 5 minutes. No raised voices, no signs of aggression. Then the officers left, nodding politely. One of them even smiled. When they passed my door, I stepped out. "Well?" I asked. The taller cop shrugged. "He's fine, lives alone. Said he fell asleep watching movies, must have been what you heard." "Did you check inside?" I pressed. "Didn't have probable cause," he said. "You should get some rest, sir." I watched them leave. Then I looked back at Mark's door. It was still slightly open, just a sliver, and through the gap, for half a second, I saw movement. A hand, small, pale. And then the door shut. I didn't sleep that night. Every sound, the pipes, the refrigerator hum. Even the wind made my body tense up. My brain kept replaying that pale hand closing the door. It wasn't imagination. I knew what I saw. Around midnight, I went online, searching for anything, old tenant reviews, news articles, anything mentioning apartment. But all I found were a few 1-star reviews complaining about thin walls and weird noises. Nothing concrete. Then I checked the building's tenant registry. Yeah, I know technically not legal, but I found it in the online portal when I signed the lease. Every apartment had a listed occupant, except 2A it just said, "Record unavailable." I stared at that line for a long time. My cursor hovered over the screen, like if I clicked hard enough, something would reveal itself. That's when I heard a sound from outside my door, faint, metallic, like someone sliding something under it. I stood up, walked slowly to the door, and there it was again. SHHHK. I waited until the sound stopped. Then I opened the door. A single Polaroid photo lay face down on the floor. My hands were shaking as I picked it up. On the back, there was writing in the same neat, careful handwriting as before. "Keep quiet." I turned it over. The picture was dark, grainy, clearly taken in low light, but I could see my apartment, my living room. The angle was from outside my window. My blinds were half open. I was sitting on the couch, scrolling through my phone, totally unaware. I felt like my stomach dropped through the floor. Someone had been outside my window last night. My unit, on the 2nd floor, meaning whoever took that photo either used a ladder or leaned out dangerously far from the fire escape. I locked every window, drew the curtains, and sat down with my back to the wall, gripping my phone like a weapon. I called the police again, but they told me there was no immediate threat. and that they'd send someone when available. Hours passed, no one came. Then at 2:58 a.m., I heard a voice whisper right outside my window. "You shouldn't have shown them." I yanked the curtains open, nothing, just the night. But on the glass, written in the fog from someone's breath, were two words: "No visitors." By morning, I was done pretending I could handle this alone. I packed a duffel bag, threw in my laptop, clothes, and left a voicemail for the landlord saying I'd be breaking the lease. I didn't even care about the deposit anymore, I just wanted out. As I walked down the hall toward the stairs, I heard something behind me, the faint creak of a door opening. I turned and saw Mark standing there, half in shadow. "Leaving already?" he asked softly. I froze. His tone wasn't angry. If anything, it was disappointed. "Yeah," I said, my voice barely working. "Just gotta go." He nodded slowly. "That's probably best," he murmured. Then he smiled. It wasn't the kind of smile that reaches someone's eyes. It was empty, practiced. As I hurried down the stairs, I glanced back up, and through the gap of his doorway, I saw movement again. But this time, it wasn't a hand. It was a face, a woman's face, pale, motionless, eyes wide open, watching me leave. And then she smiled back. I drove straight to a motel on the edge of town. I didn't even pack properly. I just threw everything I could grab into my car and left. My hands were trembling so badly on the steering wheel that I almost sideswiped a guardrail twice. The motel was one of those places that smell like bleach and cigarettes, where the carpet looks permanently damp, but it felt safer than that apartment. I double-locked the door, shoved a chair under the handle, and finally allowed myself to breathe. I took out my phone to check my messages. There was one new voicemail, no number, just unknown caller. I hesitated, then hit play. At first it was static, harsh, metallic, cutting in and out. Then a faint voice underneath. I turned the volume up. "You can't leave her here." It was a woman's voice, soft, familiar. Then another voice joined in Mark's. "You shouldn't have seen her." The message ended with a sharp crackle, then silence. I stared at my phone like it was going to explain itself. The timestamp said 3:12 a.m., which made no sense. It was 10:30 at night. Then I realized something even worse. My phone had been in airplane mode since I left the apartment. I didn't sleep that night either. I sat in the corner, lights on, phone in hand, watching the shadows crawl across the walls as the hours passed. Every creak of the pipes made my pulse spike. I told myself I'd call the cops again in the morning and demand they check his apartment properly this time. Around 4 a.m., my phone buzzed again. A text, no number, no contact, just a message that read, "You shouldn't have left her." I dropped the phone. For a moment I thought maybe it was some sick prank, maybe someone hacked me, but who would even know? Then 3 knocks on the motel door, slow, measured. I didn't move, I just stared at the door, barely breathing. The knocks came again. Knock, knock, knock. I gathered every ounce of courage and whispered, "Who's there?" No answer, just silence. Then, through the gap under the door, something slid in, a Polaroid photo. It showed the motel room I was in, same bed, same chair under the handle. But I wasn't in it. Someone else was, sitting exactly where I was sitting, a woman with my jacket draped over her shoulders. I called the cops again, hands shaking so badly I could barely hit the numbers. When they arrived 20 minutes later, the hallway was empty. No one had been near my door. They looked at me like I was insane when I showed them the photo. "Sir, there's no one outside," one of them said. "You're the only registered guest on this floor." "Then how did this get in my room?" I snapped, holding up the Polaroid. They exchanged glances. One officer took it, examined it for a moment, then frowned. "This isn't new," he said quietly. "This film stock hasn't been sold for over a decade." They left eventually, telling me to get some rest. I didn't even try. I just sat there, staring at that photo, tracing the faint outline of the woman's face. Her eyes looked familiar now, too familiar. Because when I looked closer, I realized she wasn't a stranger. She looked exactly like me. I couldn't stop staring at that Polaroid. The longer I looked, the more wrong it seemed. The shadows in the photo didn't match the lighting in my room. The curtains were drawn tighter. The clock on the nightstand, it showed 3:12 a.m. The same time as the voicemail. That number, that hour, kept coming back like some kind of curse. I started packing the room, muttering to myself, I needed to get rid of that photo, burn it, but when I reached for it again, it was gone. I checked the table, the floor, under the bed, nothing, just gone. Then I noticed something else. The curtains were half open, I hadn't touched them. Outside the window, on the fire escape, someone was standing there. A tall figure, motionless, hood pulled over their head. I couldn't see a face, just the faint glint of light on glass, a camera lens. My breath caught in my throat. I ducked down, grabbed my phone, and snapped a picture through the bottom corner of the curtain, but when I looked up again, the figure was gone. I opened the photo. It was just empty night sky. But in the reflection of the window, I could see a woman standing behind me. I spun around so fast I nearly fell. No one there, just the humming air conditioner and my own heartbeat hammering in my ears. My mind was unraveling, I knew it. I checked the bathroom, the closet, even under the bed. Nothing, but when I came back out, the room lights flickered once, twice, and the TV turned on by itself. Static. Then, through the static, I heard that voice again. "You left me there." The screen began to flicker faster, showing flashes of something, a hallway, a door, a dark shape on the floor. I recognized the hallway, my old building, apartment 2A. I yelled, "Who are you?" The static cut out instantly. Then the TV screen went black, and text appeared in white letters. "Come home." That was it. I grabbed my keys, my bag, and bolted for the door. But when I yanked it open, there was another Polaroid taped to it. This one showed me standing right there, hand on the doorknob, eyes wide in terror. I drove all night. I didn't even know where I was going, I just needed distance. The highway was empty, and my headlights carved a tunnel through the fog. I kept checking my rearview mirror, half expecting to see headlights following me, but the road behind stayed dark. Around 5 a.m., I finally pulled over at a gas station, my nerves shredded. The clerk gave me a weird look as I stumbled inside for coffee. My reflection in the glass door startled me. I looked hollow, eyes sunken, skin gray. While I waited for the coffee machine to spit out lukewarm sludge, my phone buzzed again. One new message. It was a photo. The gas station parking lot, my car. Taken from outside. I ran to the door, looked around, empty. No one there, just mist curling around the pumps. Then, as I got into my car, I noticed something taped to my windshield. Another Polaroid. It showed the apartment building, my old one. The lights were on in 2A. And someone was standing in the window. The moment I saw that Polaroid, something in me broke. I didn't even think, I just started driving back to the apartment. Back to 2A. Every rational part of me screamed, "Don't do this," but it didn't matter. It felt like something was pulling me there, like gravity itself had turned against me. By the time I reached the building, the sun was just beginning to rise. The place looked the same, ordinary, quiet, harmless. It almost made me doubt everything. I walked up the stairs, my footsteps echoing. The hallway was still, the same dull beige walls and flickering light. My door 2B was slightly open. I hadn't left it that way. I stepped inside. The air was cold and heavy, like no one had been there for months. My things were untouched, but it felt off. The hum of the refrigerator, the faint tick of the wall clock, all muffled, distant. Then I saw something on the floor, in front of my couch. A single Polaroid. It showed me asleep in bed, but not here, in the motel. And in the background, through the half-open bathroom door, someone was standing. I started shaking. My throat felt tight. I wanted to run, to scream, but I couldn't move. I forced myself to look toward my own bathroom. The door was closed now. "Mark," I whispered. No answer. I crept closer, every step heavier than the last. The floorboards creaked under my feet. My reflection in the TV screen looked pale, hollow, unreal. I reached out and slowly turned the handle. The door swung open, empty. But there was something written on the mirror in red lipstick. Just one word. "Stay." Then, behind me, a floorboard groaned. I spun around, and Mark was standing in the doorway. His face was pale, his eyes wide, mouth trembling like he was about to cry. "You shouldn't have come back," he whispered. I had to know what's going on," I said. "Who's the woman, Mark?" He blinked slowly. "You don't remember." His words hit me like a physical blow. "What are you talking about?" I stammered. Mark stepped closer. "You were here when it happened," he said softly. "You heard her, you saw her, but you told them it was me." I don't." "She trusted you," he continued. His voice cracked now, trembling. "You promised you'd help her, and when she disappeared, you stayed quiet." My head started spinning. Memories, half-formed and disjointed, flickered through my mind. Late-night knocks, muffled cries, police lights outside the building, and me, standing in the hallway, saying I didn't see anything. "No," I said, shaking my head. "That's not." He looked up at me, tears streaming down his face. "You left her in there." And then, from behind him, a voice whispered, "He's right." The voice came from the hallway, quiet but unmistakable, a woman's voice. My entire body went cold. Mark turned slowly, like he already knew what he'd see. Standing just behind him was her. The woman from the Polaroids. Pale skin, dark hair falling over her face, eyes that didn't seem to reflect any light. She wasn't solid exactly. The air around her shimmered, like heat rising off asphalt. I couldn't move. I couldn't even breathe. "Who are you?" I whispered. She tilted her head slightly. Then, in that same soft, trembling voice, she said, "You promised you wouldn't let him hurt me." I looked at Mark, his face twisted with pain. "It wasn't me," he said desperately. "It was you." My mind fractured in that moment. Images I didn't want flooded back me, shouting, slamming a door, a scream echoing down the hallway. Her scream, my hand shaking as I called the manager, saying it must have come from next door. And then silence. I backed away until my shoulders hit the wall. The air felt heavy, vibrating, like the building itself was holding its breath. The woman stepped forward, her bare feet making no sound on the floor. Her eyes were fixed on mine. "I waited," she whispered. "You left me there. You let him take me." "I didn't know," I said weakly. "I didn't remember." Her lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. "You remember now." Then she reached out, her hand cold and weightless against my chest. The world around me started to fade. The walls blurred, the floor tilted, the air turned to glass. Mark shouted something, but his voice was distant, swallowed by static. And then I wasn't in my apartment anymore. I was standing in 2A. The room was empty, stripped bare, except for a single Polaroid lying on the floor. I picked it up. It showed the hallway outside my door. Mark was standing there, staring into the lens. And behind him, I was too. Watching.